Begin the current Daf, Mesech's Bava Metzia Daf Ayin Zayin, begins 3 lines down at the top of the Amud, where the Gemara continues with another teaching from Rava regarding what happens when you hire a worker and something goes wrong. And it's not negated for him to do his job anymore. Regarding whose loss do we say it is, who's at fault over here, that there's no need for the work anymore, and who's going to have to take that loss. Today's entire world. So we're discussing today's daf are if they started doing work and then they back out. So who do we say? First of all, how much do you have to pay? As we have the machlekes Rabban and Rabdaisa, which was mentioned in our Mishnah, the opinion of Rabdaisa, as machlekes Rabban hod yad poel yoina, that the worker has the upper hand, and that even though it's going to cost the guy, the employer, more money now to get workers, doesn't make a difference. I get paid for what I did. Rabdaisa holds yad poel tachtoni. No, you have the lower hand. You're backing out. Well, you can't get paid for what you got because now I got to pay that much more, and that's going to come off the paycheck that you were supposed to get. The difference between Kabbalah and the shiur regarding a contractor and the guy who's getting paid per day, and a Ravin, the discussion regarding a Ravin, which could either be security or it could be like a down payment. Is it connected hukaina? Does it require according to how much the security was, or connected kulekana, or does it actually require the whole thing and as like a form of a down payment, and therefore the kinyan would already be done. So we begin the current daf, first finishing up really the conversation from the previous daf, 3 lines down, V'amar Rava, similar to the discussion that we were having at the end of the previous daf, says, Hi man da oiger aguri ledavlev. Someone hires workers to draw water and water his field. V'asamitra, guess what? It rained, which watered the field. I don't need any more of your services, the vasaterega, to draw water and water my field. So what's halacha? It says Rava b'seid the pailim. It's the loss of the workers, because it's nothing. It's not a negligence of the employer. It's a onus, and I don't need your services anymore. It's your loss. What happens if asanara? What happens if, however, that the river swelled and overflowed, went into the ditches that are made in the fields? It's the irrigation canals which waters the fields. And now, because of that, he doesn't need these davla anymore. He doesn't need these the water carriers. So that's actually pseida the balabais. That's going to be the loss of the employer, because the workers don't know the way this guy's field works, that the river waters it, but he knew that, and therefore this is something that is considered his responsibility, his negligence, because only he knew about this, and therefore v'yav lukapoel bottle. He has to pay them. Obviously, they're not doing any work, but how much would a worker who's willing to work but would take less by not working, that's how much he has to pay them. Another similar teaching, V'amar Rava, says, Haiman to oigid agudi ledavla. Again, if someone hired workers to water his field, upasik nara, and then the river, which is where they water from, stopped. It was used up. Everyone, all the other workers from all the surrounding fields used up. As Taisa says, this is different than the other case we spoke about nighttime, and he was saying by daytime, but palga de yoma, because halfway through the day, that's it. All the water supply got used up. So now we're willing to do our work, but there's no water to draw from. So what's the halacha? So it says Rav, it depends. Elay of the pasuk, if it doesn't usually stop, it's usually enough water to water the fields. So say the pailim. So then it's the loss of the workers, because the employer says, I wouldn't have known. This never ever happened. This is the first time this is happening, such a thing. So again, this is not considered his negligence. What can I tell you? Of the pasuk, but if this normally happens, that halfway through the day, a lot of times the water could dry up. Well, now it depends. A second depends. So ibnei masa, if these workers are members of the same town, which is on the side of the Gemara they bring down from the Rabbi Magid, that in other words, the workers are from the same town, so they know what happens to the river. They live in the same town also. So they say to the Bailim, it's a loss to the workers, because you know, you're from the same town. You realize when you took the job that sometimes the water might stop halfway through the day. But Labane must, if they're not from town, then say to the Balabais. Then again, it's a loss of the employee, because he knows this, they don't know this, This is considered his negligence, and therefore he has to pay them, like we said, al kapam kapoil bottle, because they're willing to do the work. Another teaching from Amarava. Haiman, again, the same theme. The agur aguri la vidita. Someone hired a worker to do some work. Now, the guys finished their job halfway through the day, but he hired them for the day to do work, but the work was already done. So it depends. If he has work that's easier than this, so he could give it to them. You have a worker, a lady that's in the house. She finishes at 5. You're ready 3 o'clock. The work's already done. You find something for her, some little light dusting, whatever, or with the kavasa, or even the equivalent. That mafkid lahu you could have them do. But the kashemina, but if they finish the job that you hired them for, but there's still more hours in the day that you hired them, and you have work that's more difficult, that you can't give them to do, and you have to pay them the full, payment that you had hired them for the day. Says, why? Well, why didn't you give them like a worker at least that's not doing work? You're not working for them. They have the rest of the 2 hours off. Says the Gemara, when did Rabbi say you have to give them the full payment as if they worked? Is bachlushe de mechuzah. In Mechuzah, which was the town of Rava, there were people that used to carry these heavy loads. When they sit and do nothing, it's actually difficult for them. Because the Ila Avdi, if they don't do work, they become weak. These guys, these bodybuilders, they need to be schlepping stuff. They need to be doing stuff. If not, they feel weak, and if you're not doing them any taiva. No. In other words, just because you're not, the reason why we say this Svar Pal Batal is that that's the value of what they're giving you, that they would be willing to take less. Okay, fine. So instead of $500, you would take $400 to sit around the Jishmuz. So that's how much we owe you. These guys would not take less because actually we don't want to not be doing work. We wanted to be doing work. So you can't give me less because of kapaya batal. There's no svara kapaya batal by these workers. They don't want to be sitting around. It's actually weak for them not to be doing work. So therefore you have to pay them what you owe them, which is as if they worked. Now the brayso we said on the previous daf, which is where this whole discussion of Rava came from regarding backing out, meaning where we said the guy is not working anymore, which is the theme that we were just talking about. So Amamar. So the Tanakama had said, if let's say they backed out in the middle of the job, middle of the kablanas, so he said Shamalem es masha asu. So we said, let's say these they kiblu kama liktza b'shnei salam. We said the workers agreed to cut a field for a wage of 2 salam, and they quit after cutting half the field. So we had the Rabbanan, we had the Tanakama. We said Shamalem es masha asu. So okay, so you evaluate what they did, and said the Brisa Kate said how so. So like this, Yafa, which this is actually going on what they will do, the remaining amount of work. If the remaining amount of work has, let's say it was hired for 2 slum, the job should have costed 2 slum, which is 8 dinar, Masala is 4 dinar. But now the remaining amount of work, they stop halfway, is worth shisha dinar. For the half job that's left, it's going to be 6 dinar. So still the Tanakama said, no Islam Sela. We pay them a sell of the workers who stopped halfway through. So the Gemara explains, why would that be? The guy is going to be paying more than the 2 slum that he originally thought he's going to have to pay, because Kasavi Rabban, the Rabban hold Yad Poil Al Yoina. The worker has the upper hand, even if he backs out, because he could back out. Why could he back out? Because the pasuk says in Mikra Chafei Ki Avadeihem. Hashem says regarding the Jewish people, they're my servants, and they're not servants to servants, which is where the Gemara in the first parak Kedushin of Beis and Beis learns out this halacha that a worker could back out halfway through the day because you're a knecht to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and for me to be a knecht to you would be avodim lavadim, and therefore he could back out. And yes, even though I back out, I could back out, and therefore, even though you're going to have to pay more now, it doesn't make a difference. You have to pay me for the job that I did. So even though now it's going to cost you more than the original contract of 2 slum, fine, but I still get my 4 dinar, even though now you're going to have to pay 6 dinar for the rest of the job. Now, then the Gemara, then the Bryce had said, Yigmur Malachtan, or the other option is finish the job, and then you could take the 2 slum. So the Gemara says, okay, Pshita, I mean, obviously, if you're going to finish the job, you're going to take the 2 slum, which was the original contract. But what's the chiddush in this halacha? Says, no, there is something here. Dayaker avidita. price of work went up. People are charging more. Minimum wage suddenly went up. The imru payalim, the word imru is the terminology of separating, of distancing. The workers backed out. Now the employer goes and appeases them. He begs them. He says, "Guys, you're not doing a job. You can't stop halfway through the day over here. You know, although yad pal al yaina, we're going like Rabbanan, and you could get paid what it is. Do me a favor, guys. Finish the job." Now, what would you say? Since the worker has the upper hand, Matsu Amrule, they could tell him, no, Kima Faisina, when you appeased us to finish the job, Adaita de Tafas Lana Igra. We were assuming that you're going to pay us more for the work. And it makes sense because the price of work went up. So you're begging us to finish the job, well, pay us now 6 dinar, not just 4 dinar. Oh, Kamashma, that's the Chiddush. We could tell them, no, when I appeased you was because I'm going to give you good lunch. I'm going to put out drinks. I'll take care of you, but I'm not going to pay you more. That's why I'm begging you guys to finish the job because we made this up. So therefore, that is a chiddush, which normally you look at this case. Oh, finish up with 2. Of course, that's what they made up. No, because they're backed out and he's begging them to finish. You would have thought maybe he's willing to pay them more. Mashralan, that no, it's according to the original payment that they had made up. Now, the Chacham then continued and said that if what's worth the remaining amount is worth a selah, so nice Sela, he pays for them for their half a selah. Someone says Pshita, obviously, if the amount of work that's left is from the halfway point is a selah, what they did was a selah, and that's what he's giving them. So what else should he give them? Isn't that obvious that he should give them a selah, which is 4 dinar? For the half that they did now that they backed out, and he's giving the remaining work for a selah. No. Here also it's a similar type of a chiddush. The zal avidita meikara. Interesting the way the Gemara is saying it. When he hired them, the price of work of labor was cheap. Now, but these workers, did not want to get hired out like other workers. So vagrinu b'tvei zuzim. He paid them a little bit more. When he hired them for a half of it to be a selah, really, it should have been a selah minus a dinar. It should have been only 3 dinar, not 4 dinar. He paid them more than the going rate. Now, at the end, meaning by the halfway point, the price of work ended up going up. Now, other workers are also taking for their job not 3, but 4 dinar. They also take a seller for the job that they do. So Ma'odetema, what would you say? That since according to Rabbanan, the worker has the upper hand, so they could tell him, wait a second. We backed out halfway. You say, okay, you hired the job for 2 slum, and now you want to give us just a seller. No. Tvei zuza amritlan. You told us you're going to pay us more than the going rate. So tvei zuza havlan. Everyone gets 4 dinar now. Give us 5. Kamash malan, it's a chiddush to Amal. We could tell them, no. When I promised you guys an extra zuz, to have a kimlechu, that you guys didn't know that that you're going to take a selah, and I wasn't willing to pay that amount, but I saw that you guys weren't willing to do work less than the selah. So I said, you know what? I'll add on a zuz onto the payment for your guys' work, so that you guys will be happy and you'll take a selah. Now that everyone takes a selah, which is what you wanted, I didn't make up that I'm going to give you more. I just made up that I'm going to give you the selah. I didn't say you're going to get a dinner worth more than anyone else. That's the chiddush in this case, that if the remaining amount of work is a selah, and they did a selah, that they'll get a selah, because you would have thought to say that, no, actually, maybe they wouldn't get just 4 dinar, which is a selah. They would get 5, because we want to get more than what everyone else is getting. Well, when I hired you, that was the case. Now that everyone's getting, I didn't say you're going to get, I said you're just going to get the selah, which is what you're getting. So that's the chiddush in that case. This was all according to Rabbanan. Again, this is all explained the brayso that we had in the previous daf. which all explain the halacha of the Mishnah, which Rabbi is like the halacha of our Mishnah. The Rabbanan don't hold like the halacha of the Mishnah. Rabbi says, no, shamalan is masha asili asis. Says, wait a second. When this worker backs out halfway, we first evaluate how much will the remaining work cost the employer, and if hayayafa shisha dinarim, if the remaining price for the work is going to cost the balabas 6 dinarim, then naislam shekel. He gives the workers only 2 dinarim, only a shekel, a half of a sela. Because as the Gemara explains, so he holds yad poel al tachtaina. The worker has the disadvantage; he has the lower hand, and therefore it's going to cost you, worker, whatever me, the guy who's hiring you, is going to have to make up some other way. Now, then Reb Daisa said, or they can finish the job, and they could take 2 slam. So the Gemara says here also, similar question we had before. Pshita seems obvious. Obvious. So the Gemara, no, it's necessary. The zalavidata, the price of work went down, and the case is ve'emer balabayis. The employer is backing out. Now, the work is backing and say, guys, we need a job. You made up that we're going to have a job over here. Now, halfway through the contract, you're backing out. Now, remember, the price of work went down. So what would you say that since we're going in Reb Daisa that holds that the work has the disadvantage? Now, the reason is because they're begging the employer for the work. Now, when the workers appease him, maybe he would say, Matzi Amalahu, he could tell them, look, guys, I was willing to keep the contract and keep you guys working, but according to the lower rate, I'm getting lower rates now. Mashmalan, that's the chiddush that they could tell him, no, that no, our intention was we're going to do better work for you. That's why we begged you to keep the job, because you had hired us at a higher rate. And even though the price went down, that's the chiddush that, yes, he cannot pay them any less. They could finish the job and get paid according to what the original contract was. Well, what would that? Well, that's not. But even if but that's not what the case is talking about, because ilal tachtoina would mean that if they actually don't finish the job and then he hires new workers and he gets cheaper, that they get compensated. Here, they are finishing the job, and we're saying that they actually get the higher rate that they had originally. That's actually what they're saying. That is the yad balabayas al tachtoina. Because if it was al yaina, maybe you would say that, you could pay the cheaper price, but it's different than the case of the Mishnah. Because Mishnahs, when they say yad balabayas al tachtoina, is when he's getting new workers and he's getting cheaper workers. So if he's backing out, he's going to have to compensate them for how much he's saving by the new workers. Here, they're finishing the job, so they're going to get the higher rate that they originally had got. Now, what happens if Sela, if let's say the remaining work that he's going to be able to do is going to cost them a Sela, and they backed out halfway? So nice them, and then he gives them what they did, Sela. So the Gemara says, here also pshita. It seems to be obvious. It was supposed to be 2 Islam. They did a Sela. The remaining work is a Sela. So why wouldn't it be a Sela? Says the Gemara, no. He says, no, it's necessary only the zilu inu gabei zuzumi kaga. Similar to what we said in the Rabbanan in the opposite way. What happened originally is that they went down in price, lower than the going rate. They said, we'll do cheap work for you, and ulasayv zilavedita. And at the end, everybody in labor, everyone went down in price. So that's what we're saying. That's why the remaining is going to cost a Sela, because actually at the time of the condition, half of it would have been fit to be more than a Sela. When they made a price on the whole job for 2 slime, they were pressed for money, and they said, really going rate is much more, but okay, we're desperate, so we're gonna charge you less. Now the halfway point, everyone's charging less. So what would you say, since according to Rabbi Daisa, the worker has the disadvantage that he could tell them, no, but you guys told me you guys are going to charge me less than everybody else. So I'm going to give you a zuz less than everybody else. Now, everybody else right now is charging a Sela. You guys should take a seller minus a zuz, only 3 dinar. Because you guys told me I'm paying you the work now, but everyone charges this amount now. You guys are supposed to give me a better rate. Mashal, that's what they say. The Amr that they tell him no. When we told you a zuz less than everyone else, they'll have a kimlach because you couldn't afford. We saw that you weren't willing to give anything more, so we agreed to charge you a sela, which was less than the going rate of work. Now we're not going less than that. You were willing to pay a sela. Now, because everyone else is also charging a sela, we're going to give you less than that. That wasn't the point. The point was regarding the price, and therefore that's the chiddush of this part of the halacha. Now, after we finish the brayso amarav, it says halacha kribdaisa, halacha falsa kribdaisa, that the worker has the disadvantage, and therefore, if let's say they back out and it's going to cost the boss now 6 dinar to make up the other half of the job, they're only going to get a shekel and not a sela. Says really? Did Rav really say this? But Rav says, a worker could back out even middle of the day, obviously meaning he has the upper hand. And if you're going to say, well, Rabbi Doisa differentiates between a hired laborer for the day, the kablanis, to someone who has a contractual agreement, meaning by schiras, the rationale of avodah avodah applies, because he's basically a knecht, he's a slave, he has to work for you, and he'll get compensated for that. But by kablanis, a guy who is a contractor, he's not an eved. When he gets paid for the job, it's interesting word Rashi says. He says, "Ein ze eved el atzmoi." He's not a knecht, but he's a slave to his own. He's self-employed, but he's a slave to himself. But he's not a slave to you, and because he works, you want to give him a job to do, or give him a car to fix, or something like that. Fine. Rabbi Doisa was talking about by kablanis, because that was the case he was talking about. Kiblu kamalikzer. A guy says, you want your field harvested. Let me see. I'll charge you $500 for harvesting. Well, that's not an eved to him. I'm self-employed. I'm not an eved. I work for myself. Rav was talking about a schir yom. He's talking about a guy who gets paid by the job, meaning he gets paid by the day, not by the job. And therefore, you basically boss him around, tell him whatever you want to do. So maybe that's the answer. That it's not a contradiction. When does he hold like Reb Doisa that you have the disadvantage is when you're a kabbalah. When do you have the upper hand is when you're schir yom, because Hashem doesn't want you to be a slave to a slave. So then when you have the upper hand, you can back out. Says Gemara, Umishanile, but does he differentiate? That's the answer you want to give. But would that really work? But Vatanu in the Braisa, someone hires a worker, halfway through the day, he hears that a relative of his died. Or let's say he has a fever. So it depends. If he's a hard laborer, as a Ketin Beis, so nice you have to pay him for his wages, as Rashi explains, because he's an einus. You can't penalize him to make him have the disadvantage in the lower hand and to give him you give him a half of the money of that what he worked. Now, if let's say he's a contractor, so nicely kablanusai, you give him his kablanis. That's what the price says. Now says Gemamani. Who is the town of this price? Elim Rabbanan, everything is the Rabbanan, I mean not like Reb Doisa. So my area, why are you saying why are you picking those cases? The honest where those are einsim, or a guy's mom is sick, he has running 105 fever, or his brother Leilani was in a car accident. Kila on this name, even if there's no einus, Rabbanan say they say the worker has up and he could always back out. Obviously the price is going like Reb Doisa. Oh, Shmamina. For the fact that he picked a case of einus by both of them. But if it wasn't einus, then not. Even though he's talking about two cases. He's talking about a case of schirus and of kablanis. So you hear from this, he does not differentiate between a hired laborer or a guy who gets paid for the job, and that you always cannot back out if there's no einsin, which would sound not like Rav. So this is a difficulty because Rav is saying halachas like Reb Doisa, and then we have another teaching of Rav that says that no, the guy can back out. So which one is it? Is Yad Poel al Yoina or Yad Poel al Tachtaina? So Amar Rab Nachman by Yitzchak, he said the truth is there is a difference. Now, the truth is Reb Deisa agrees that a sacher, a hired laborer, has the upper hand. The way Rav said. So why did he pick in this brisa, which we proved is Reb Deisa, a case of oynis by sacher? Because truth is, even Rabbanan would say this. What do you mean Rabbanan? Rabbanan don't need an oynis. Rabbanan hold the Yad Pal is old as Elyon. It's not true. Even Rabbanan would agree, and for sure Reb Deisa, that if there was no oynis, you wouldn't be able to back out. Why would that be? Oh, because the case of the Bryce is talking about B'davar ha'avid. It's talking about something that's going to get ruined if the work is not done right now. But Divrei HaKol is going like everybody. The worker cannot back out. Even if you usually say the Palal Yoina, that's only something that's not going to be an instant loss for the employer. The guy's like, you start a job, you don't finish a job, this thing's going to get ruined, I'm going to lose out $100,000. Then he cannot back out. The whole Machlikish of Desh Rabban only when it's not a Davar of it. So therefore, it could be that Rav is like Reb Deisa by the case of Kablan, but the case of a Sacher, yeah, you could back out, and Reb Deisa would agree that you could back out. So then, wait, if Reb Deisa was you could back out by Sacher, then why in the case of Sacher here does he say Einzin? Oh, because it's a case of Davar Avid. Davar Avid has to be an Einis because even the Rabban would agree it would have to be Einis. Even though they hold Yad Pol Yaina, here they would agree that without an Einis you cannot back out because of Davar Avid. So. But then the Gemara continues to ask and says, wait, it's not, we learned in our Mishnah that it said, Kol Mashana, whoever's the one that deviates, Yodei al Tachtoina, he has the lower hand. And whoever backs out, Yodei al Tachtoina, he has the lower hand. So, says the Gemara, Rabbi Shloimy, I understand, when it said in the Mishnah, Kol Mashana, Yodei al Tachtoina, whoever it changes from what the contract was, red dye to black dye, whatever, Yadal Tachton has the lower hand. Okay, the system of Tanik Rabbi Yehuda. The Tan is anonymously telling us, like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, it's a machlekes and paragoys leitzim baba kavod of kofim abeis. You hired him to do red and he did black, which brought later on in Daf Ayin Ches and Beis. So that's like Rabbi Yehuda who holds that the one who deviates, he has the lower hand. But Ella, the next halacha that we say, of kol achayzeboy, whoever backs out Yadal Tachton, he has the lower hand. That's what yomai. What's that coming to include? What didn't we say in the Mishnah? We already spoke about cases of backing out in the Mishnah. Lavla suyi poil, isn't it coming to include a worker, meaning a schir yem, a guy who gets hired for the day? Reb Deisa, and like Reb Deisa, because the Reisha of the Mishnah already spoke about umnin, hasirches umnin, which that already we understand of kablanas. There we're saying yada al tachtaina, which I already mentioned. When we say kol ha'chayzer, what are you coming to include? You're coming to include even a poil. Wait a second. You're telling me that a Sachir Yoim has the lower hand? Well, that's not like Rav. Rav said a Sachir Yoim could back out in the middle of the day. So it seems to contradict what Rav had said. So the Gemara says, Ella rather Reb Deisa, you're right, Tarti Kama. Reb Deisa says two halachas. He says it both by Payil and by a Kablan. V'Rav, Saval Kabasei B'chada. Rav holds like him regarding the halacha of Kablan, that the worker is at the disadvantage. He disagrees with him by regarding Schir Yom. He holds he has the advantage because of Avadahim, but Avadim. So it's not a stira per se. Or if you want, you actually can say no. Your whole question doesn't begin because when the Mishnah says this final phrase, which seems to be superfluous, whoever backs out has the disadvantage, was not come to include the case of a pile, where the Torah was actually lenient to him. It's not true. He does not have the disadvantage. And therefore it could be like Rav. Rather, it's coming to include a different case of backing out. Like it's like Linda Brisa. This halacha, whoever backs out has the disadvantage. Kate says, what's this talking about? So it's regarding the following case. Someone sold a field to his friend for 1,000 zuz. But now he only pays him 200 zuz of the 1,000. So now if the seller suddenly wants to back out, the buyer has the upper hand. Now, obviously, he only paid 200 out of the 1,000. But since he has the upper hand, if he wants to, he could say, tell him, I want my money back. Or tell the karka can say, oh, you know what? I want to have property the equivalent of the amount of money that I paid. Now, mehechin magbehu, From where does he have him collect the money that's owed to him? From the best. Now later on, the Gemara is going to explain why would a buyer get the highest quality of the seller's fields, but Al Kapanim, he has the option of either getting $200 or $200 worth of karka, and it's from the highest quality. Now, that's when the seller backs out. But if the buyer backs out, so then the seller has the upper hand, which is, if he wants to, buddy, take your money back. If he wants, he can say, you know what? I want the money. I want cash. Here, take property in the equivalent of your money. Fine. Now, again, because now the seller has the upper hand, where does he collect it from? From the most inferior quality of fields that he has. Fine. He says that actually malamdin oisan, we teach them, meaning any guy who's coming to buy who doesn't have all the money to pay right now, he only has some money that, like to make a down payment, so to substantiate it, we teach them that, you know what, that the seller won't be able to back out on you. Kate said, how so? So what you have to do is like this. He should write to him, Ani plaini ben plaini, I am this person, the son of this person. Macharti sada plainis laplaini belvzos. I sold this field to that person for 1,000 zuz. And he gave me from the 1,200. And this is very important, the next words, and this is what we tell the buyers that they should write a contract like this. And I am collecting what he owes me of as a creditor for 800 zuz. Oh, so that's already terminology of a loan. Meaning it's as if I took the money of 1,000 and I gave him back a loan of 800, and karka is acquired with kesef, which he gave him. So Kana acquired it. And then then the buyer could give him back the rest of the money even after many years later, and therefore then he won't be able to back out. But Al Kapanim, what the Gemara wanted to say with this Praisa was that when our Mishnah said was not coming to include a pile of schir yaim, because it's not true. A schir yaim, actually Rav Desu would agree to Rav that you could back out because you have yod el yoina, because avodahem avodim lavodim. So what are we including in kol ha'chayz b'yod l'tachtoina? That was regarding a sale between the buyer and the seller, not between a worker and the employer. Whoever backs out has the lower hand, and here's the disadvantage. And he doesn't get to choose if he's getting back money or property, and that's what the halacha is going to tell us. Now, once we introduce the brisa, so in Talmudic style, we go through and we come through that brisa. Amamar, time the brisa said, if the seller backs out, we said that mehechin magveyu. So from where is he going to collect from? We said mina idis. We said from the highest quality stuff. So the Gemara says, the Gemara assumed me'idis in a chasav. That means to say that if this guy has some other property somewhere out in Idaho, and this buyer has the upper hand because the seller is backing out, he could choose whatever's the best properties that the seller who is backing out from the $200 worth that he paid out of 1,000, he could choose his highest quality. Says, well, I don't understand. Why would that be? But v'lo yehei, this buyer shouldn't be, that his halacha is it shouldn't be so lenient, but Ella, even if it's going to be stringent, it shouldn't be as more than a Baal Chayev, than a creditor, because he's owed for the $200 that he paid. So if it's now a Mishnah Masechtas Gittin Baal Chayev Din Bebeinis, a creditor has his halacha is to collect from the medium grade. And the reason why really it should be ziburis, but they made it to medium grade, is because we have to be concerned that people might close the doors of lending people money, because if I can only collect from ziburis, I'm not going to be willing to lend. But here also, this guy, what right does he have to collect from the idis? At the most, he should be able to collect from the bainis. But moreover, the bigger question the Gemara asks is, I don't understand. Ha'ara di Av Zuzi. This is the property that he gave the money for. So he should be getting from this property to himself. What's he getting from the guy's other properties from his idis? So Menachem Yitzchak says, no, you're right. It answers both questions. Me'idis shaba u'miziburi shaba. You're right. The guy's not getting the two cases of depending who's backing out of it. Idis ziburis. It's not in general his property of idis and ziburis. It means from this property that he was selling, and he only paid 200 out of the 1,000. That's the its best or its worst best, or which which Tais actually discusses that you didn't really have to say Zibur Shabbat because we didn't have a question on that. But Al Kapanim, we're talking about from the field itself. Now, he says that no, he says you could even say that it means the guy's best stuff. Why would that be? In general, a person who's buying such a large property, so expensive, that's costing 1,000 zuz, he doesn't usually have so much capital. Only if azuli moizel umazvanichse, that he sells his car, his other properties, his apartment in Florida. He's got to sell them cheap because he has to come up with capital to afford such a big piece of property. Was he suddenly, this guy had the small mom and pop apartments that he owned. He's going in for the big commercial real estate that he's buying over here. So when the seller backs out, comes out v'havale kenizik. He's actually damaged through the guy. The guy, you're not just backing out of a deal. I sold all my properties. I sold it for 80 cents on the dollar. I'm losing out. But then the Mishnah getting teach on the zaken shamal and beidis. When it comes to damages, then you can collect from the best of the properties of the mazik, like it says in Shmeiz Chabez Meitiv Zdeishan. So that's actually why it's actually the guy's idis, because you actually damaged. It's like the Tais says lav dafka mazik, because we're not really evaluating according to damage that he damaged him. He's only paying according to the amount of money that he gave him, but it says it's somewhat similar to mazik, at least that he should collect his debt from the guy's best. Now, we said in the Brisa that Reb Shimon Gamliel, he says, Malamdin Oysan Shelo Yachzru. We teach them an approach that the seller won't be able to back out. We said, Ketzad, how so? He writes from which this whole thing that it basically says that it's like a loan now, and you already bought the whole field, and therefore he can't back out because you already bought it. But says the Gemara, time of the Kasab Lehachi, it sounds like only because he wrote in that wording, which now he made the 800 that he owes him like a loan, but like as if he already paid it to him. Now, but obviously it sounds like that if he would not write like this, like he wouldn't acquire the whole field. It says, but I in the Brisa, the following halacha. If someone gives a security to his friend, and he tells him, look, if I back out of this deal, my security will be pardoned for you. You get to keep the security. And the other guy, he also won't be outdone. He also gives like an exaggerated promise. He says, if I back out, I'll double your security, meaning I'll give you not only your security back, I'll give you double that amount. So says the first town, and the Sky Matanam, the Rabbi Yossi says, yes, the conditions have to be fulfilled. So the Gemara explains, Rabbi Yossi goes according to his reasoning elsewhere. He says, Asmach Tekanya. When you give a guarantee of a hyperbolic guarantee that a person promises his friend who relies on him, that if he doesn't fulfill his condition, he's going to have to give, yes, that actually has to be fulfilled. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's enough for him to acquire according to the amount of his security. Meaning, this guy's not being meichel it, this guy's not doubling it. It's just that either one of them cannot back out from fulfilling the sale that they had promised, at least according to the amount of the security that there was. But you could back out regarding the rest. Now, however, Rabbi Shmuel says, when did we say this? When did Rabbi Yehuda say his halacha? That you could back out. And that this guy is only going to take from the security, that amount of the security is what he's going to take from the sale. That's only Bizman when he gave him to him in the medium of a security. But not that was a down payment. So that's where he said to him, Ervayni Yikoin, that let my security acquire. That it should acquire the whole thing according to the amount of money that he gave. So this guy is not going down for him to sell him the whole property for that amount. But let's say he sold him the whole property for 1,000 zuz. And he gave him 500 zuz, meaning as the beginning of the payment, which is a down payment. And that means the rest is like a loan. Then he acquired the whole property. He could pay him the rest even after many years later. So you see that you can't back out even when you made just a partial payment without even writing that the rest is a loan. So this seems to be a contradiction when you do a down payment, what's with the rest? Can you back out? From this brayso, it sounds like Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg is saying that you cannot back out. The previous brayso, Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg said that you could until you make it like it's a loan. So that seems to be a contradiction. It says Gemara like it's not difficult. Why? This when we learned that if you don't make it into loan, the first brayso that you could back out is talking about a specific case. The ko'ayel, we're talking about where the seller is going the nafik and he's collecting azuzi. He's trying to get his money from the buyer to get fully paid up. So when he's doing that, his actions speak louder than words. He's revealing his intention that because he was pressed for money, that's why he sold the property. Now, if you're not giving me the money when I'm pressed for money, then I never had intention to sell this to you. So therefore, until you pay the whole thing, you have not acquired it. The second brayso that says, even if you just give a down payment, you acquired it. It's a loy ka'al v'nafik azuzi. We are not desperately trying to get money. Then, yes, the down payment has acquired the whole thing. Like Rava says, when someone sells something to his friend, and the guy keeps on calling, saying, when's the next payment? When's the cash transfer coming in? Like honey, the buyer is not acquired until he fully pays him up. But he's not desperately coming after it. Then he has acquired it, and that's the differential between these two braysos of Shimon Gamliel. Now, a related discussion from Amar Rava, again another teaching from Rava, says, if someone lends a guy 100 zuz, he pays him back $1 at a time, 1 zuz at a time. It's payment. But he could have tinus on him, complaints against him. Because I'm like, you tell him, it's going to get lost from me. Hey, guy, you have $100 bill, you hold on to that. But $1, okay, it's a soda here, a snack bag here. It's like it's going to get lost. So he's paying him up, but he could have tinus on him. Related discussion: Who gabra the zaman lechamra lechavre? A person who sold a donkey to his friend. Upashle. Now there's still remaining by the buyer chad zuzah. That there's one zuzah. It sounds like betray zuzah. I'm thinking chad gad betray zuzah. There's one zuz here left that he didn't pay up yet. And the seller's desperately calling azuzah for that one zuz. They say, you owe me $1. So Yosef Rav Asher was saying he was looking into this. Kihai Gavna, such a case because of one zuz. Would we say that the guy could back out? In other words, kani or like kani, would that be that he acquired or not? Similarly, Rav Mordechai Rav Ashi says, Zuzah kizuzi domi. One zuz is like many zuz. But like kani, no, you have not acquired it. If the guy is still calling you, saying you still owe me 50 cents, you still owe me $2, it's not done. So on that, I asked the Gemara, he says, but we say in the name of Rava, that's such a case you would acquire. Somebody said to him, you have to interpret your teaching, that when a guy sells his field, there's a continuing type of Ayin Chesem and Elf, because of its inferiority. Then there we testify that even not being pressed for money, he also would have sold it. The reason why he's desperately calling you because he wants to get his remaining money is because he wants to collect that you don't back out. Because he's like, you're probably going to back out because it's not such a great field. But not because he doesn't want it to be sold. He wants it to be sold. Anytime posting us.